All right, so I think we're live.
Mhm.
All right, so
Welcome.
as usual, yeah, exactly. So why don't you welcome the people yourself to this
Oh,
time?
maybe that's the first time. So I would like to welcome everyone into our weekly podcast about the Pen Book 8 and everything related into that. Let me welcome my dear friend Ahmed bin Hamud. I hope I pronounced it correctly. My name is Gabo Sem, and we're gonna run this lovely session together. If you're joining first time, I highly encourage you to go and check all of our previous live sessions which we had in the past 4 weeks. I'll be going
Yeah,
live every Tuesday at the same time. Yeah, today's session
yeah,
will be fantastic
yeah. So today is the fifth session, Gabriel.
already.
Uh, we're ending this on 7th of July.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, so far, we've covered several topics from the new PMP exam guides, the PMBOK, the ECO, etc. And today we're going to cover, I would say, the most important and the longest chapter in the PMP training, which is the project governance. And
Mhm.
honestly, guys, whoever is watching, why is governance so important? That's because it's the only performance domain that has got processes in each focus area. It's got processes in initiating, in planning, in executing, in monitoring, controlling, and in closing. And those processes are not silly or insignificant processes. They're the processes that cover the entire project end to end. Now, let me tell you something important. In the previous PMBOK versions, we used to call this integration management. Okay, with a little bit of different processes, but most of the processes are the same. Just a couple of them. The sourcing process is new. A couple of others, were readjusted or merged. So before we used to call that integration management, and then governance was a separate topic. Governance
Mhm.
most meant, how to rule or how to conduct the project, what are the escalation paths, what rules to follow, etc. But now we call that governance, governing the project. Okay, and it's pretty. It worths a lot, to. It's pretty worthy to look at it. So I will be sharing my screen as usual. So let me just do that. Let me share my screen. I'm going to share as usual, the entire screen, and let us share with you important notes, okay, about the governance. Again, as I said, at least in our PMP training, this is the longest chapter. This
Mhm.
is, I think, the most important chapter because if you understand governance, I'm talking about our training, okay? I don't know how other trainers are doing it. In our training, in this chapter, we make sure that you understand project management end to end because many of the other chapters, they're specific, okay? Like,
Yeah.
the stakeholders chapter, the team chapter, the risk chapter, the finance chapter, the scope chapter, the schedule chapter. Those are specific chapters touching specific parts of the project. But this governance one, it's touching it all end to end. And here, I think, Gabriel, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah. It seems like
Oh,
it still takes some time on my end, but I also have the copy. So yeah, I will follow that. Don't worry.
yeah. Okay. So let me just check also on LinkedIn if I'm going live. If my screen is being, yeah, my
Yeah.
screen is,
So I open up the LinkedIn session and I see it on LinkedIn sessions. Oh, okay. It's just showing on my screen. Don't worry about it. Yeah, we can go.
yeah. Guys, now let's look at these processes one by one, all right? Because we will try to touch some of them in details. So, as I said, the governance performance domain is the only one that has got processes in each of the five focus areas. In the initiating, there you start with initiating the project and the related steps to initiating the project, like
Mhm.
having the initiation meeting with the sponsor, receiving the project charter or drafting it, receiving the business documents related to the project, such as business case, benefits management plan, other related documents. Then, once you have drafted your project charter, you have to hold a kickoff meeting so we can start the project. We have a slide about that. We go through that. Then in the planning, you will integrate all the project plans, the scope management plan, the schedule management plan, the finance management plan, the risk management plan, the resources management plan, and the stakeholders engagement plan. Even though, yeah, I mean, it's all the project related plans. Merge them, align them, etc. And then this is not new process, even though this initiate project or phase, it was probably create project charter before. Now it's called initiate project. But
Yep.
this plan sourcing strategy is a new process. Okay, so you're going to plan for your sourcing strategy. Where are you going to get your sources from? Some in-house sources, some from sources from the outside, etc. Now,
I have a
once that,
question.
yeah, please.
So, in your opinion and your experience, frame it like plan resource strategy is much better than having a resource management plan. What do you think?
Plan sourcing strategy is more important than having what? Sorry.
Resource management plan.
We have that resource management plan. We have it in the resources.
Okay.
This is the sourcing strategy. Where are we getting the resources from? Okay, are we doing the work in house? Are we outsourcing the work? So that's the sourcing strategy. Okay, it's about the work. Where are we going to go to do the work with in house? Which work will be done in house? Which work will be done outsourced? Mainly it. For in the executing focus area, we have managing the project execution as usual. Okay, so when the team conducts the work, you're following up with your team, monitoring the project work, etc. Managing quality assurance, because quality, it used to be a separate knowledge area. Now it is no more a standalone performance domain. It's part of the governance. Okay, and then managing the project knowledge, whatever knowledge the team accumulated, whatever lessons we have learned, etc. And then in parallel with the execution, of course, every project manager will be monitoring, controlling the execution to make sure that the execution is going, exactly according to the plan. Okay, so here in the monitoring, controlling, the project manager or the project management team, they will be monitoring, controlling the project performance. And in case of any deviations or any needed corrective actions or change requests, then they will implement that through the change management process, or how we call it now. It's called the integrated change control. Now it's still called that. I have a slide from the PMBOK 8 on this presentation. We will show it to you, but now it's called assess and implement changes through the integrated change control process. And then finally, once the work is done, or for whatever reason we have to close the project, in case the funding is over or the project is not delivering the expected business results, we move on to closing. Now, so Gaber, here we have 9 processes, okay? 1 in initiating, 2 in planning, 3 in executing, 2 in monitoring, controlling, and 1 in closing. So total of 9 processes, because we are down from 49 processes as in PMBOK 6 now to 40 processes in PMBOK 8, and almost 1/5, almost 20% of those processes are in the governance performance domain. This is why I said is the biggest, longest, most important performance domain. And usually, because I already started delivering training based on PMBOK 8 already since a couple of months, usually when we reach chapter 5, because this is chapter 5, I removed number 5 from here. This is chapter 5. Usually once we finish chapter 5, our students can go on and submit their PMP application, usually, okay? Because they're ready. They do understand already, what project management is about before even we continue with the next 7 chapters, because the total training has got 12 chapters. Yeah,
What I
okay.
would like to add here is that so I come up with a new name for the governance, which is, I call it the command center of the project.
Yeah,
which is
like that.
Which is there from the beginning to an end. Without that command center, you don't have a project. You cannot manage all these different aspects of it. And I think comparing with, let's say, the PMBOK 7 or the current version of the exam, this is actually now frame it on the right way, that we always need this type of command center, which is capturing or managing the project from beginning to an end perspective. not just like blocks one after each other.
Yeah. One of my favorite slides, Gaber, in my
Yep.
training is this one.
Hmm.
I really enjoy it a lot. Why? Because it gives an overview of what the full project management is about.
Yep.
Because in the PMP training, we don't study only about the project lifecycle. Now, let me phrase this correctly and carefully. All right, give me a second, Gabriel. Give me just a second. Okay.
No problem.
All right. It's just all right. Let me clarify this. In the PMP exam, there are 180 questions. Always, I'm talking about the new version. I'm not talking about the old version anymore. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, Almost 176 to 178 questions, almost, are about the project lifecycle.
Yeah.
Whatever happens in the project initiation, in the project planning, in the execution, in the monitoring, controlling, in the closing, sorry, whether it's waterfall, whether it's agile, I will explain what this means down here, whether it's hybrid. So between 176 and 178 questions in the PMP exam are about the project lifecycle. This is what the project managers do. However, there are 2 to 4 questions on average. I'm always talking on average. Could be more, it could be less. But on average, there are 2 to 4 questions about what happens before the project.
Hmm.
Mainly here, we're talking about the pre-project work, whether it's a case study, or what we call feasibility study, um, whether it's any sort of agreements or approvals on an idea to become a project, whether it's a decision matrix, for to go on a project, and then also the post-project work,
Hmm.
because for this version in particular, there are 1 or 2 questions on average. I'm always talking on average, okay?
Yeah.
That take the project manager or whoever is taking the PMP exam to the post-project life. Again, what happens after the project? How to hand over to operations? How to hand over to maintenance, for example, or to production? All right. How to make sure that or how benefits are being tracked even after the project, because and I appreciate this in PMI. The mindset is really to have people, PMP certified people, who are capable of understanding the entire picture and not only focus on the project lifecycle. Yes, most of the exam is about the project lifecycle. It makes sense. It's a project management exam. However, it's important also to understand what happens before the project and what happens after the project, even though, and let me clarify this clearly, the project manager doesn't have to be necessarily directly involved in any pre-project work or post-project work more than receiving a business case from the sponsor when starting the project, or handing over the deliverables to operations or maintenance or production, and also handing over putting the documents, the project documents, on the organizational process sets, like such as the lessons learned register, project closure documents, and then handing over also the benefits realization plan for whoever is taking that over. Yes, this is the full picture. 176 to 178 of the questions are about the life cycle. This is what most of the training is about. In our
Hmm.
training, we have one section of probably like 8 slides about the pre-project work, and I think a couple of slides about the post-project work. But out of the 800 plus slides in our training, let's take out around 300 slides are about, no, not 300 actually, it's less, 200, probably, I don't know, around 300 maybe. There are questions. The rest, no, less than 300. It's probably 200-ish. Slides are about mock questions injected inside chapters and a mini test at the end of each chapter. The rest are project management slides that cover mostly the project lifecycle, Gaber.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just to add from the overall, the life cycle itself, I think the current version of the exam is is touching base on the pre-work and also the post-work, but is I think now is slightly more detailed, where the project manager is expected to understand the end-to-end view, the end-to-end impact, and also be more attached or more knowledgeable. The expectations, the PM is more knowledgeable about the benefits itself, and also the benefits management plan, to make it he or she can be more accountable what benefits are going to be realized, which is very much close to real life, because in real life PMs are many cases are also being asked and should to track, for example, return on investment, or what are the margins, and they are also, let's say, the bread and butter for the PM. So overall, I'm very happy to see that the new version is really giving more understanding, more clarity, more end-to-end view, and especially focus on that benefits, which is in that relation is this command center is managing the project, but is also in relation to the project finances, to make sure that the benefits are realized in that case.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, guys watching, why did I call this slide one of the two most important slides in my entire training? That's because this slide alone, if really understood, especially if you have completed the entire training, then you can go back to the key slides, which will make you remember the entire picture. Because let me tell you, Gabriel, what I did in my training, the version 8 training. I created what I call the snapshot slides. This is one of them. For example, I'm going to teach chapter 5, which is governance. Now, in governance, we will go through what happens in initiation, in planning, in executing, same as you see here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But then there are over 100 slides in this chapter. I think over 100 slides exactly in this chapter. So to make sure that people will remember, I created this snapshot slide, even though it was inspired from another slide which existed already since a few years and is available online, okay? But I updated it a little bit to fit with the new version. And this slide itself, if someone completed the entire training or chapter 5, this slide will make them remember what's most important to do in the project lifecycle. Like, for example, initiation, here the project manager gets assigned, okay? Through the project charter, which officially authorizes the existence of the project. And here also you will know your stakeholders. So then once you have your project kickoff meeting, those stakeholders should be aware of the project and should support the project, especially the key stakeholders. Then once you're done with the initiation, you've got your approvals, you move on to planning. Here you pick the project approach, the project management approach, okay, that fits with the project context, the project needs, the stakeholders' expectations. It could be, an agile approach, full agile approach, or a full waterfall. And for waterfall, there are two types. There is the full, complete traditional waterfall, and there is the light waterfall. Okay, I go in details on the training. Probably I have a slide about them. Maybe I will see that. Or you can pick one of the hybrid types. We teach at least 5 hybrid project management types in this PMP exam training. Why? Even though in the PMP exam, you will not see, let me say it this way. It will not maybe ask you about the types of hybrid. It will only ask about hybrid project management. But we teach at least 5 types. Why? That's because for your practice. We're not preparing you only for the exam. We want to prepare you for the exam and also to succeed in your projects, in your initiatives. That's why we go through 5 types of hybrid project management, okay? And then, once you're done with creating your project management plans, and integrating them, aligning them and integrating them, then you can have your baselines. Have those plans, especially the scope, the schedule, the finance. We don't say cost anymore. We can use it, of course, especially performance measurement, but we say now finance. You can have your baselines. Once you're done with your baselines, then you can move on to execution and monitoring and controlling at the same time. Okay, so you execute, your team they are performing the activities, they're building the deliverables, you're watching that, you're making sure that everything is going according to the plan. And it's not only the team you're monitoring and controlling, you're monitoring and controlling your environment, your team, your risks, your stakeholder engagement, changes coming from anywhere, etc. So because once you're done with your team or with your experts, from planning, the team will do the work, you will monitor and control and execute the communications, okay? Because you spend nearly 1/3 of your time communicating as a project manager, reporting, sending meeting minutes, then 1/3 updating project documentation, following up with the plans, etc., and then 1/3 tracking the execution, resolving issues, etc. So really, you have to know how to spend your time 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay. Now, once all the work is done, or in case it's been decided that we will, the project will not continue, then you're done with the execution is done for for either reason, and then you move to closing the project in an administrative correct way. Okay, you start by documenting your lessons learned, preparing the handover documents, the acceptance documents, transition the deliverables, disband the team, close any contracts or any outstanding points, and then you officially close your project. And once you do that, as I mentioned earlier, you update the organizational process assets, the OPAs, and you really have to understand this, guys. Now, let me be clear about something before I ask Kaber to add his notes here. Let me be clear on this. Guys, I want you to remember this once for all. When I took the exam in 2012, there were tens of questions in the PMP exam that asked me about, they were theoretical questions or memory questions. What is the input for this process? And it gives you a few options. You have to choose an input. Or what is an output of this process? Okay. But here in this new version, you will not see any such questions. Maybe in a one or two drag and drop questions, or what we call them matching questions. Maybe you will see that. I say maybe. Yeah, maybe you see input, output, matching questions. Maybe. But one or two, no more. Okay. But you will not see any regular question, any MCQ questions where it asks you, it puts you in a project situation and asks you which one of these is an input to this process. No, you don't see that because the project, the project's way of asking questions has changed and has improved. Now, when I said you move on to closing the project and updating the OPAs, you need to remember that flow of processes. It's not because in the question there will be in the exam, there will be questions asking you what's the output of this process, what happens after closing. No, but you need to know it because PMI is testing you on real project management knowledge. You really know and understand what happens in a project. This is why one of the secrets, probably I will reveal, this is why starting July, okay, our PMP students will have to go real simulation of a project of nearly, it can go from 1 month to 3 months. It's really up to them, okay? Real simulation of a mock air project in which we apply all of these processes. They can find it in our companion, but this is after July. After July, we're opening the mock project where people will go from initiation phase with all the processes to closing phase with all the processes, so they can really simulate what they have learned in real project, on a real project. It's a mock project, but it's coming from real experience, real situation. So no one ever will have only theoretical knowledge. No one. We're making things correct, live, practical, so you can remember it by practicing and not just by studying, Gabriel.
No, I can agree with you, and I think people need this type of experience because the biggest challenge on the exam is to how to differentiate between real life versus the best practice. And I think many times I tell my students that you need to be so focused, almost you need to envision two containers in your mind, one for how you do projects for the PMP and one how you do it real life. And because many times I think if I look into this screen and there's the plans, the baseline, stakeholders. So, you have at least 3 years of experience to do the PMP. Most of it, shouldn't be a huge rocket science in the end because you do that, you practice this real life. But I think the understanding the difference between how real life versus the best practice works for the PMP, I think that is the key. And the quicker you understand the differences, that's how you're going to be able to, go and excel and, pass the exam by the first try. So yeah, I really support your idea of having that mock projects on because many people simply they're not able to distinguish between the the best practice versus how we do in real life, and that can be a troublemaker. Let's put it this way for the exam.
Exactly, exactly. So this slide is taken from the PMBOK 8. So it's actually basically is the same as this one. So here you have your sponsor supporting you or preparing the business documents for the project, mainly the business case, the idea study, the decision of the go, no go. If it's a go, we have a project. If it's a no go, we don't have a project. Then here the focus areas, the 5 focus areas of the project, and we can see the iterative approach of them. Not really iterative. I mean the how we can go from executing back to planning and back and forth through the monitoring, controlling, focus area. These are the project boundaries from initiating to closing. That's where you live as a project manager mostly. And then you have here 2 important outputs of the project: the deliverables, which go to the customer after acceptance, and then the project records. By project records, we mean project documentation, okay, whatever documentation they are you have used on the project. They should be, first of all, quality documentation, okay?
Yep.
And then you feed them into the organizational processes, such as lessons learned template, lessons learned register, and other documents, okay? This is the summary of this slide, okay? Here, just because in the governance performance domain, Gaber,
Yep.
you need as a project manager to pick the project management approach that would fit to the project. So you're gonna have phases in your project, and there are different types of phases. You can have sequential phases, like in a traditional waterfall. Okay, I say traditional waterfall because we really have to be careful between differentiating between the traditional waterfall, as we know it since decades, and now the more modern waterfall, which is being introduced to the PMBOK 8. Even though if you go to PMBOK, you will not see that word. You will not see it anywhere, guys. You will not see the word modern waterfall. But you will see, if you have read previous books, if you have worked previously in project management, you will see that now waterfall is being re-imaged, reintroduced. It's still waterfall, but with a little bit of more, more flexibility. Now it's not hybrid. It's not hybrid. Hybrid is
It's not
when
hybrid.
yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying this is not hybrid. This is none of them
No,
are hybrid just yet.
no, it's not hybrid. Modern waterfall and hybrid are not the same, because hybrid means you have practices from agile, you have practices from waterfall applied in the same project. Like, you have sprints or iterations along with a full project plan. For example, you have a planning phase in planning and then execution in sprints. That's hybrid. But modern waterfall, you can have interim deliverables. Okay, can have feedback from customer during the project. Yes, in waterfall. Before having the customer feedback, there were no questions about that in the 2021 version of the ECO. But in 2026, there will be. Yes, regardless. Yeah. And a few other things. That's not only this. A few other things. Why? Because waterfall can be improved as well. Okay, without getting out of the form of waterfall, but we can have multiple deliverables. We can have feedback, welcoming feedback, because as you know in waterfall about getting feedback from the customer, for example, in the middle of the project, you can have a demo. Why not? You can demonstrate to the customer what have you created so far, for example. Why not? Okay, and this is also, if you go to the PMBOK 8, you will see that. You will see if those practices available in the PMBOK 8. So you're gonna have sequential phases, like in traditional waterfall. You can have overlapping phases. Phases.
Maybe just to add in here. So I think the middle section overlapping. It's really reminding me like the rolling wave planning, more or less. That we're not waiting for the requirements to be ready, but we keep moving forward. And I think from everybody's benefit on the call. So I think waterfall can have a certain level of flexibility within the frame of how the steps are following with each other. And I think PMI is with this new explicitly framing it this way, they are acknowledging that, and I think that's more close to a real life. Whereas I like to call the sequential approach like a step-by-step approach, that we finishing certain building blocks to go into the next one. And I think it is very important that either the project manager have to decide which is the best approach, or the PMO will come as a Captain America saving the day type of approach. That if the PM will not decide, then let's follow what the PMO is kind of directing the organization. But yeah, this can set the scene, because many times there will be a constraint on the scope, or on the schedule, or on the finances. But this is supporting to make the right decision with more real life engagement.
Yeah. And then there is the iterative. If you want to go with iterative, repeating the same steps in an iteration, that is more of an agile way of working. Agile is in a separate chapter, okay? And I want to clarify something, because some people are confused. They say, PMBOK 8 talks about waterfall. We didn't see agility in PMBOK 8.
Yeah.
No, actually, PMBOK 8, when it talks about initiating a project, or planning for a project, or executing a project, it's mentioning how to initiate a project from both viewpoints, from an agile viewpoint and from a waterfall viewpoint. How to do the planning, again, the same, from a waterfall viewpoint, from an agile viewpoint, etc., etc. Okay, so actually it does exist, and it's an important part of the PMBOK. You just have to read it carefully and read through the lines, or between the lines. And if you don't have time to read the PMBOK, you don't have to. Come join our training, and you get whatever you're looking for. And you don't have to read any book, actually. This slide also is famous. It's available online. Many people see it. I think most trainers use it. I have created another slide similar to it, but I always got back to this because it's simple. It can help a lot. Guys, basically, waterfall is a linear approach. Okay, you go from one phase to another, one phase to another. Even though I have, I think, mentioned this, or I have, I think, in one of the other slides, made an update in my training to explain that that we could have not only one big outcome at the end after we go from one phase to another, we go from one phase to another, from one phase to another, from one phase to another, having a big outcome at the end, but we could have a couple of deliverables in the middle if we want. Okay, because waterfall now has been updated. But waterfall is known for having a full project plan from the beginning. That's the traditional way. Now we can go more with rolling wave planning, for example, which fits very well with the modern context. Agile is different, guys. Agile, it works in iterations. You work in iterations. You have iterations of 2 to 4 weeks. It could go down to 1 week, but not ideal. 2 to 4 weeks. Each iteration, the first day, you start with the planning of that iteration. What are you and your team are going to work on in that iteration? Here, I'm talking general, okay? Because then if we go to Scrum specifically, then we will see who does the planning. Is it the team? Is it the PO? Is it the SM, Scrum Master? Now I'm speaking generally. So on the first day, planning happens for the work that will be carried out during the entire iteration. And the last day, there are a couple of meetings. One is for the customer to review the team's work. Again, it could be the PO reviewing the team work. I'm not going now in details. And then retrospective after that for the team to improve their way of doing the work, or their way of working. In the review here, when the team, they demonstrate their work to the product owner or to the business representatives. Okay, here the PO will compare what was done versus the plan versus what was agreed through definition of done or whatever other tools to decide on what is accepted as done and what should be improved or refactored for the next time. Every day during implementation, between the first day and the last day, there is implementation, the execution. Every day the team is having a daily meeting of 15 minutes in order to share, updates and, raise awareness of any impediments. And then at the end of the iteration, there is an outcome it should be an outcome. And then the team will get feedback on their work so they can improve it or, also make some additions in the next iteration. The good thing about Agile is you don't create a full plan for the entire project in the first iteration. No, you create a plan only for that particular iteration, which your team will start. Okay, sorry for that. And then the steps get repeated, from one iteration to the other. the most important mindset in agile, and now it's the same in waterfall, is to release value, or theoretically be able to release value at the end of the transformation. And that value can be incremental, or can be incrementally built, or can be improved from the results, can be improved from one iteration to another until we get to or we get the value we want. All right. So this is a nutshell, in very nutshell, the difference between uh, linear waterfall and the adaptive approach, which is agile. And agile and governance are the two longest chapters in the entire training. Once really you master those two chapters, you're good to go. You're good to really answer more than half of the exam, Gaber.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think just to add that, so you still need to know Scrum inside and out for the PMP
Yeah,
exam, so that did not change. Because remember that the delivery vehicle for Agile is going to be Scrum, and that's something which still need to be known very well. The other methodologies or delivery vehicles like Kanban, Extreme Programming, you need to, I think, just to have a understanding what it is, maybe on a very high level, very high level overall. But yes, that's still the bread and butter of the PMP exam. In fact, 60% of the questions now are going to be Agile, Scrum, and Hybrid, and 40% will be Waterfall. So that is, I would say there's more emphasis how to deliver that value, even though I think we all need to take it with a pinch of salt. Because, give you a good example, if you're preparing for your PMP, you can this done on a iterative manner, or a really, I think that would be more like a step-by-step approach than anything else. Because even though, let's say, you score 80% in 6 weeks' time, but your exam in a month from now, Ahmed or I cannot give you a half PMP certificate. See what I mean? So it's always going to be taken with a good set of understanding what makes sense, what does not make sense. But overall, the focus is to how to deliver that value faster, and that's what the best practice is really propagating looking forward.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. All right. Um, it's very also important to note, Gaber, the importance of tailoring. Now,
Yeah.
because my father is a tailor, I created this slide to put in context how whatever project management approach you pick as a project manager for the project, you can always tailor it to the needs of the organization, of the project, customize the framework or the approach. It really depends on what your project really needs. But tailoring has been in the PMI's mindset already since a couple of versions, version 7, version 6. I think there was a word about tailoring in version 5. I'm not sure. Maybe version 6 it started there, but version 7 for sure it was heavily mentioned as a principle, then as a chapter 3 in the guide part of PMBOK 7, and now again in PMBOK 8 it's emphasized on again the importance of tailoring the approach to fit the context, whether it's a company context or a project context or specific context. I've created this slide. I have it in my full training. I might not be able to explain all of it right
Maybe the
now.
video section, the video section, that's something which is interesting. The number 3, that hybrid project management. I think that looks
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So we
This
just
slide,
work on that.
yeah, uh, this slide is it's quite important, uh, but it's it has to be put in a context because actually. Let's say it takes some time to explain it in the full training. So here I will go from the traditional waterfall where usually we have a rigid fixed plan from the beginning with a single final delivery at the end, to more of a modern waterfall, of more flexible waterfall where there is more flexibility in planning, multiple deliveries. Then more. Then the next level is maybe to learn the hybrid project management where we have few types of hybrid, like start waterfall, finish agile, or we have waterfall project with agile components, or agile project with waterfall components, or we start agile, finish waterfall, or we have waterfall and agile running in parallel. These are the main 5 types of hybrid project management. Then there are Then we can go and learn Agile. We can use the standard Scrum. This is so far the what we have in the PMBOK. More than 80%, more than 80% for sure, maybe up to 90 or more of the Agile questions in the PMP exam are about the standard Scrum as we know it, as we've learned it. Okay, you have sprints don't change duration. Then you have planning meeting at the beginning of the sprint, then the implementation in the middle of the sprint, and then review retrospective at the end of the sprint. Okay, and no changes during the sprint. And then there is advanced Scrum. Advanced Scrum is not yet part of the new PMP exam. I'm not sure if it will ever be. I'm not sure, but there is an advanced Scrum. Not so many people teach it, but yes, it's a more flexible approach. Like, if you have a 4-week sprint, each week will have its own independent planning meeting of 2 hours. Okay. And then a mini customer demo at the end of that week, but always only one official review at the end of the sprint and only one retrospective at the end of the sprint. Why 4 planning meetings in a single sprint? Why? And each week is starting with a planning meeting to create even double agility in the middle of the sprint. This is advanced Scrum, and advanced Scrum is not only about this. There are so many other practices in advanced Scrum. Not so many people teach it. I started teaching it 4 years ago, maybe, but it's so specific that I don't spread it. Okay, I don't want to spread it, and I just mentioned it just quickly on one single slide in the chapter 5, the governance, but it's not there yet. It's not part of the PMBOK 8 of the due PMP exam yet. If we will ever see it, I don't know. Only if PMI decides to apply advanced Scrum. But I just want to bring this slide up. It's one of many slides that I'm not sharing, or I did not share on these live podcast series, but actually we have them in our PMP training, whether it's to help people pass the exam or people to be advanced in applying project management compared to their peers, Gamer.
Yeah. And I think you are absolutely right. In terms of awareness, even the Scrum of Scrum, something which needs to be, like, say, a known definition and component. What does that mean? Also, I think what to add on that weekly planning. So that type of weekly approach and planning in each week that is more in line with or faster agility towards the value delivery, because that can be prioritizations where the 3 weeks is just not good enough, and instead of canceling a sprint goal, is much better or easier going on a weekly basis. So no, that's I'm glad you actually been teaching that, because in that case that makes your program very unique, which is more in line that real life expectations.
If I bring up, if you want, if you don't mind, I can bring up the entire PMP training material, if you don't mind. And if I go to chapter 10, which is Agile, I think in Agile, in the chapter 10, see, we teach Scrum, that's why it's in red. So chapter 10 is more than 90% is about Agile practices. In section 10.2. Section 10.1 is more about concepts and approaches of Agile, and section 10.2 is about Scrum. But also we have slides about Scrum of Scrums. We have 2 slides, I think, about Lean, about Kanban. I think we have 1 slide or 2 about feature-driven development, test-driven development, behavior-driven development. At least they exist on 1 slide. Scrumban, we have a slide about Scrumban for sure. We don't really teach XP. I removed that. The SDM AUP, Agile Unified Process, I removed that. Dynamic Systems Development Method, I also removed that. But I do mention them here. Why do I have them here on this summary? You see, chapter 10, Agile and Hybrid. And then then section 1 is about concepts and approaches. And then large scale Scrum also is out. Safe. I just mentioned them for people to know them. And then we have only 1 slide. I have 1 slide somewhere in the presentation. Here, for example, this is taken from PMBOK, where I explain what's the difference between a scaled approach, a team method, Okay, but quickly. See, I don't go in details in crystal families, methods, family of methods, or extreme programming. I don't really go deep in those. But I have a couple of slides on SOS, Scrum of Scrums,
Hmm.
Lean, Scrumban, Kanban as well. Kanban, I have a couple of slides about Kanban, but 80% or 90% of the section 10.2, not 10.1. 10.1 is about concepts and approaches, but section 10.2 is all of it is about Scrum. And just section 10.2, I think it has around 60 slides, 60 slides
Wow.
or 70 slides, maybe 70 slides. Yeah, it's so important to teach Scrum because 25% on average, 25% of the PMP of the questions in the PMP exam are about agile, and out of those 25% of the questions, which is roughly 45 questions, out of 45 questions, I think 40, 40, 38, 40 are about, or you can answer them based on Scrum. So really, people
Mm.
need to understand these percentages, even though they vary a little bit, plus minus, but it's mostly this. So people not only need to prepare for the exam, they need also to understand the percentages, what they
Mm.
mean. You know, your instructor will have to prepare you and help you understand those so you can know what to focus on. So sorry for bringing up this full training presentation. Now let's go back to this selective slides. Okay. Now, few important notes. Maybe remember we mentioned that earlier. When you start your project, have your charter approved by your sponsor. Okay, have your kickoff meeting with your key stakeholders, sponsor, etc. Whoever needs to approve and authorize the start of the project, we can use the company's resources in planning and then move on to execution. You have to develop the plans, the project, manage the plans. You know, whether it's a scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resource, risk plans. Have your baselines, the scope, the schedule, the finance. Put all of that in a consolidated project management plan as part of the governance. Okay, all of this takes place in the planning phase. The project management plan defines how the project will be managed. Gabor, please interrupt me at any moment you want.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. I'll definitely do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Then you move on to planning. I mean, we moved on to planning. This is in initiation. The charter and kickoff are in initiation. Project management plan is in planning.
Yeah.
I've picked only this slide from insourcing and outsourcing, even though I have few other slides in the full training. Insourcing, that's having in-house resources to work on your activities, and outsourcing, that's when you decide to go with external resources. So you have to understand why to insource, why to outsource. Sometimes you have to make a cost benefit analysis. Sometimes, okay. Sometimes outsourcing is little bit. It depends on the context. Sometimes it's less expensive. Sometimes it's more expensive.
Yeah.
It really depends on the context. So in the exam, guys, pay attention to insourcing, or we call the make, outsourcing, or we call the buy in certain contexts. And if a question puts you in a cost benefit analysis, you really have to pay attention to the context, because sometimes insourcing is less expensive, sometimes it's more expensive, and the same applies to outsourcing. For example, if you don't have the expertise at all in-house, you'll have to go with outsourcing, and sometimes outsourcing can increase your cost, unless if in the original project plan you've already let's say reserved the budget for those activities on an assumption that you will do them in-house, but then it turns out that you don't have the skills in-house, you don't have the expertise, so insourcing them will be so expensive that you go with outsourcing because maybe it's less expensive. So really,
Yeah.
the answer of the question, which is less expensive, is not black or white, Gabriel. It's not.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And also PMI will never, let's say, so they prefer that you always cost conscious, but that does not mean that you always go with the cheapest available option. Now, going into this make or buy analysis, which is, I would say, currently is part of procurement and is coming up as a procurement area. This is something which PMI will love to press all the students. You have to make a choose. You either make or buy, and they also sometimes bring this up in the context of agile, that when to do a make or even a buy analysis. But I would say in a very general principle, if you don't have a budget, obviously you cannot buy. If there are other circumstances, you still have to make. And then I think you need to know that how this flow works. Is not a huge rocket science, but you need to understand the main principles of that. I think that's what I would like to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Then we mentioned already this before. We said that quality now is part of governance. Gabor, I never asked you about your opinion. Do you
Yeah.
agree that quality is no more a standalone performance domain and now actually is part of governance?
Okay. I partially agree and I partially disagree, like most of the time, because so in one hand, so the way how I really understood quality through project management glasses, because everything which we look into now is how project management sees quality, not necessarily, let's say, how the quality profession is actually been working. So we need to be reminded by that, because quality in the eyes of PMI is not more than meeting requirements. Now, how you meet requirements, then okay, so you need to identify them in advance. You need to make sure it's part of the scope, so therefore it can be part of a deliverable. So overall, it does not have, let's say, the right home to make it being on its own or being part of governance. Let's say I'm accepting this change, be honest with you, but overall quality will be still in line with the planning approach in advance. So what I mean by that the challenges around cost of conformance, cost of non-conformance, cost of quality, appraisal cost, what are the difference between them? I think that's definitely going to be fully challenged on the exam. But quality is still, I think that's where some people get this wrong, that I have my Lean Six Sigma kind of certificate. Now I know everything about quality. PMP is nothing to teach me now anymore. But you need to remember that all this through the filter of project management, and that's why it's still unique. That's why you need to still pay attention. It now might not be, let's say, a super self-explaining area in that case.
Yeah.
But
So quality now has been touching, is touching now. Sorry, not has been. It's touching on two major layers: quality of the deliverables. I think I have it here. Maybe no, and I have it in the full training, and quality of the processes. How the quality of the deliverables which the customer asked for, and this is how the team needs to ensure, or this is where the team needs to ensure that they create the deliverables up to the acceptance criteria of the users or the customers, okay, in a proactive way, okay. And then there is quality control once the deliverables are done, and this is done usually by externals or a separate team. Sometimes also the customer, they're checking that quality, reviewing the quality. But also there's the quality of the project management processes. How good are your project management processes? Are you, as a project manager, applying correctly project management? I mean, what is the quality of your project documentation? What is the quality of your project management work? And I really appreciated this so much. I don't remember very well if this was in PMBOK 4 or 3, or maybe it was not. But I remember something. I remember that in 2009, when I started teaching project management, I was a project manager and I was teaching project management at IBM's internal university. I was telling the students all the time, quality is not about deliverables. Quality also is about the quality of your project management work. I don't know why I was saying that. Maybe I read it somewhere.
I know
maybe
why.
Why? Tell me.
I know why, because PMI never created the formal process of project management audit. Technically, how you delivering your project, and that's why. That's why technically we can only relate what is in quality, but in one point it was always viewed as deliverables focused, whereas not necessarily your quality of delivering the project based on the best practice or based on company standards. You see, that's why.
Okay. So anyway, so then when I saw that in PMBOK 8, I was wondering, like, did PMI go back in time and bring that back, to focus also on the quality of the project of the processes, or did I just 20 years ahead of, or 15 years ahead of PMI? I don't know which one is correct, but either way, I'm so glad that quality is not only about the quality of deliverables, but also about the quality of the project management work. I have to speed up a little bit.
Maybe you are just one year ahead of PMI, but I think that's good enough, no?
Yeah. Also, part of the execution in governance, you will have to manage the knowledge. Of course, you have to differentiate between tacit knowledge, which you gain through experience. It's not easy to explain, not easy to document, but it's probably you can use storytelling or mentoring to convey that knowledge versus explicit knowledge, which is usually easier to document, to codify, to transfer, and all of that you should be aware of. You should understand the difference between these knowledge types, because when you sit with your team every month, and I insist on every month to document the lessons learned, and please don't document your lessons learned only at the end of the project when you close the project. I'm not talking about agile projects. I'm talking about generic, waterfall, and hybrid. Okay, these types of project management. Please don't document lessons learned only at the end of the project. Make that a routine habit. Make that monthly, because if your project would last for 20 months, even though now it's kind of rare to find projects running for 20 months, and if there are, please come to me and explain to you why you should not have projects running for 20 months. But if your project will be running for a longer period, and then you have some turnover in your project team, you would lose that knowledge. Plus, people will not remember what happened, what kind of issues that happened 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 1 year ago, and how did we solve them, and what did we learn from them. So do that on a monthly basis, Gaber. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, and I think also what I normally add to the tacit knowledge to my students is is almost the same as your expert judgment, and because where your expert judgment is coming from your experience, from your historical knowledge, and I think it needs to be studied, even though it sounds kind of simple. But this is also, let's say, a breaking point between a waterfall and an agile delivery. That in agile we really relying on more for tacit knowledge, whereas on waterfall, due to the way how it's been designed, you have to use both of them most of the time, and I think that's not always, let's say, clear with all the students. So that requires, I would say, a little bit of a better studying and understanding in that sense.
Have your meetings during the execution. You can have different types of meetings. These are some of the most recurring or typical meetings in a project. Your team status meeting, your risk management meeting, in case if it's not part of the status meeting, if you want to have it separately, because the team, they are dragged by the technical discussion in the status meeting, so we don't have time for risks, so we have to have it in a separate meeting. Your meeting with the internal sponsor, and I insist, guys, on having a meeting with your sponsor, either by yourself or with your team, but with the sponsor on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Because the sponsor is there to support you, to guide you, to direct you. That is so important. And then you have your bi-weekly or monthly steering committee meeting, whether it's with a customer or without a customer. And usually we have both. One steering committee meeting just without the customer, just with the larger audience of stakeholders from inside the company. And then another one we call the customer meeting, or the customer steering committee meeting, where we have now attendance from the customer side with their representatives. Okay, and please, everyone watching, project management is not to memorize. Project management is to be applied, to be practiced. Please don't forget that, guys. Okay, we're not teaching you how to pass the exam. We're teaching you how to apply project management correctly, so you can pass the exam easily. So this is the difference between someone who joins PMP training just to study for the exam, and here they will pass. But someone who really applies this and prepares for the exam, they pass easily. Okay. This is an example of your lessons learned register. This is just taken from our full training. So what kind of lesson learned did you learn? What was it about? What kind of impact?
I think the key thing to add with the lessons learned is that so you equally document positive and negative lessons learned as well. So it's not always just negative; it's positive as well. Even though at many companies they're just interested what did not went well, but you have to kind of also document what went well as well. And
this is what we call it here recommendation. What to improve, recommendation.
Yeah.
And then we have another template for the retrospective meeting in Agile project, and it's a little bit more detailed. Then in the monitoring controlling focus area, you will have to track your project's performance. Now that's a big topic. Actually, we have an entire subsection, I think. No, sorry, an entire section about it. Okay, so you gotta measure different KPIs or different, performance areas. The typical ones are, performance related to scope, schedule, cost, quality, risks, resources, stakeholders, and value. Now, so this is so important. How to have your dashboard. What is the project's dashboard about? What's the RAG status about? These are some of the key performance measures. We have an entire section about them in a different chapter. This is the earned value analysis plus other performance measurement techniques. Have your, collect your data, analyze them, compare with baseline, and then, what's the status of your project. If there is variance, between the actual and the baseline, it means you have a variance, and then, then you need probably to take an action, maybe whether it's corrective, whether it's a preventive, whether it's a change request. Sorry, Gabor?
Just okay. You finish the sentence, and I will add something there.
Yeah, whether it's a corrective action, preventive action, change request, update, defect repair. It can be different, really, outcomes of the monitoring controlling. Yeah. Yes, Gabor, please.
So what I wanted to add is on the key performance measures, point number 2. So when you guys see the SPI, CPI, and SVCV, so that is something which will not disappear, and I think will never disappear on some extent, because PMI still wants you to make sure you have the understanding of how to read project status through numbers, to be able to understand that where we are ahead, when we are behind. And I think same as with the current exam, you can expect maybe 1 to 2 questions, so it doesn't require too much of an overwork, but definitely you still have to make sure you understand those small measures to make sure you are able to read project status.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Common performance measurement tools such as dashboards, status reports. I think I have an example of a status report somewhere. Earned value analysis, KPIs, trend charts, reviews.
You have a project closure report later on a slide.
I have it. I think I have it. I think status report and closure report. I have both. Managing changes, guys. Now, this is an entire subsection in the chapter 5 governance. It's so important to understand how to manage changes in traditional waterfall, in hybrid, and in agile. They're not the same. For the agile is the easiest part. The hybrid is the easiest part. Okay, because it depends on which part of the in which part are you now? Are you in the waterfall part or the agile part? But you really need to understand the difference of incorporating managing changes in waterfall versus hybrid versus agile. And let me say this. Yes, we know agile welcomes changes, appreciates flexibility. Yes, we know this. And yes, we know that in agile we don't have a formal change management process, like an integrated change control, as we call it here, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session. Okay, but. And I say but, and please pay attention to that. Maybe you will see in the PMP exam a question about a change in an agile project, and there is some sort of structure. Now, we will not have a CCB, but there is some sort of structure, because so far the way we have talked about changes, and this is most of the way how we handle changes in projects in the PMP exam. Okay, it's so flexible without a formal. We don't. I mean, the questions in the current in the 2021 version, when there is a change in agile project, they don't go in. The question doesn't ask you how to create a change request, what is the change request template, how to create a change log and update it, how to go through CCB, blah, 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 etc. There is no such questions in the current 2021 version. But in the 2026, you might see a bit of more structure. No CCB, but maybe a change request. Maybe sort of, a change request or change template, maybe. Light, yes. Not a thorough process like in waterfall, yes, but there is some sort of analysis. Let's say change impact analysis, We didn't see that much in the current 2021 version in Agile, but I think we will start seeing that in the 2026 version of change analysis in Agile project. So let me finish this, Gabriel, and I'll let you talk. So, changes can touch scope, can touch finance, can touch schedule, can touch resources, stakeholders, risk. So when there is a change, you need to know what to take, what kind of action you want to take. Is it corrective, preventive? Is it an update, defect repair? And see, this is why we call the change impact analysis. And this is applied to both waterfall and Agile, even though Agile to lesser context. And then once someone has to decide on that change, even in Agile, which is usually the PO. PO. For certain types of the changes, it's the PO. For other types, is the sponsor. Okay, or the steering committee. By the way, we have a steering committee in Agile, guys. Yes, we do have a steering committee in Agile. There were no questions about that in 2021 version. In 2026, there is questions about. There will be, and usually change can be approved, or rejected, or deferred, or asks for more information. Just understand this. It's not applicable only to waterfall. Partially or parts of it, you can see it in some of Agile questions. Gabriel.
Yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to add, and this area, and that's why we see this increase of 60% Agile, Scrum, and Hybrid, because as soon as we talk about changes on Agile, we need to be careful, because on Agile, for example, we're not changing our minds, we are actually been changing priorities. So the direction is always clear that we're going to try to deliver the value. And where things are getting slightly confusing, when you going to the details of Scrum and how Scrum explains that how we do prioritization, there is no room for, let's say, the changes on that sense, or even a change board, or having it in a more formal manner. But as soon as we're getting down into the realms of hybrid, I think that's where what Ahmed you refer to, we're gonna see more on those, and we might be just more surprised. But I think again, you need to remember how Agile through the values and principles might define a change is different than how Scrum is actually been handling changes. And I think that's where the key learning with this, but otherwise, in waterfall, this is a business as usual process. We do this exactly the same way as we're doing it today with all the decisions. But what is key important maybe to add is the roles and responsibilities. So for example, do not expect the project team or the project manager approving changes, because that will be still a conflict of interest, which you all would like to avoid on the project delivery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just wanted to bring this change control process, the steps of a change. So whenever there is a request or a need, so the change is logged by the PM in the change log. Then and of course the full training, we explain how to use the change template, or the change request template. How to make analysis on the impact, blah blah blah. So I don't have time to do it now, but then the change is shared with the CCB, who will make an impact evaluation on the baselines, and then either they will defer the change, reject, or approve. But if they approve, the PM, after updating the change log and the stakeholders, they will have to update the baselines, implement the change, and verify the results. This is in a nutshell the process. As I said, change management is an entire section in the full training, because it's such an important topic. And I think in the PMP exam, there can be around 10 questions. Can be more, can be less, which touch directly on changes. Yeah. Around 10 questions. Yeah. Here's a form of a basic status report. There is more status report examples. We have them in our companion, but this is very traditional one, very simple one, simplified. You have the summary of the project, then your rack status, red, amber, green. Okay, if it's red or amber or green on your project performance domains, the status on milestones, percentage of completion, planned finish date, and actual finish date. Key risks to raise to the awareness of the steering committee or sponsor, same for issues, and the next steps until the next reporting cycle. Yeah. This is the basic status report. There are a few other forms which we have in the company, as I mentioned. And finally, I think for the governance, from the closing section, I picked just, I think, this slide. Yeah, only this slide about the project closure report. So usually, because not many people know how to create a project closure report. Usually, it's a document. I go with PowerPoint. I think several PowerPoint slides. Now, it will include an executive summary, what has been completed, main objectives achieved, acceptance status, final performance on the major performance domains on scope, schedule, cost, quality, etc. Then deliverable status, which were accepted, which were deferred or cancelled, stakeholder acceptance, formal approval, customer sign-off, closure date, confirmation of closure date, then
Yeah.
lessons learned. Okay, I tell you a funny story, Gabriel. When I was working at IBM, we never ever closed the project without a closure report, and we never ever completed the closure report without the lessons learned. And I hated that because, it takes time to document that, to run after my team to get, that was in the beginning of my career. But then when I made lessons learned meeting a monthly habit, it made things much easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Handover and open actions.
Don't worry. I hated being a project manager first 6 months of the first role. I hated this entire thing. I don't like that. Everybody was pinging me. Do you know this? What's the next step? What we're gonna do with this? Like, leave me alone. But you are
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Then the handover and open actions. What are we handing over to whom? Are we going to hand over anything to support, to operations, to production, etc.? How the benefits will be tracked after the go live. This is what have already mentioned. And then the final closure. Of course, there is a mistake here. I don't know why it's here. I will change it. The project manager does not approve, does not
Yeah.
sign on the closure report. No, it does not. This is a mistake. Sponsor, yes. I'm changing that. I will change that in with sponsor, management maybe, or CEO or customer. So
Stakeholders.
yeah. So key stakeholders, exactly.
Key
Sponsor,
stakeholders.
definitely. Key stakeholders, yes. So these, I think, is in a nutshell. What happens on a closure report. Of course, full details we cannot share them now here. Anything to add, Gaber, if you want?
No, I mean, yeah, I think many organizations not necessarily doing an extremely good job on this, but there is lots of benefits into it. But in an era where a project manager have to manage 2-3 projects at the same time or even more, this is something which definitely requires, I would say, a structure, a PMO support. But yeah, it's all has its own value, and this is coming back on the PMP exam big time, where you're going to be challenged about value, how the lessons learned are captured, how it's going to be used afterwards once the project is closed, or what proper closure really means. That's why PMI will challenge all the students.
Yeah. Couple of slides on PMO quickly. I'm not going to take long, Gaber. So there is an entire appendix in the PMBOK 8 on PMO. PMO now as a value delivery entity. Not only we don't we don't learn in the PMP training only about the traditional 3 types of PMO: the supportive, the controlling, and the directive. Okay, but also we go a little bit deeper on traditional versus modern PMO. Traditional, which is process focused; modern, which is more of a value enabler. We call that the value enabler. Traditional PMO are more control oriented. Now modern PMOs are more customer stakeholder oriented. I'm not going to go in all the details there, but modern PMO is known for more flexibility, more tailoring, more pushy towards value delivery, and
And I think
also.
just to add, so the project manager is expected to be more flexible. So therefore, the PMO is also needs to be flexible. So that's why this whole mindset is following the change also in the PMO side. I mean, just for everybody's understanding, that's why we see this shift or the more flexible, more value focused PMO as well.
Exactly. And PMO is no more a one size fits all. Now we're talking about tailoring, even at PMO level. Guys, I mentioned this before. I mentioned this, I think, in the last episodes. You can expect questions in the PMP exam, putting you in a structure of a program, in a structure of a portfolio, not a standalone project. And also, there are deeper questions on PMO and the relationship between PMO and project manager, and the PMO and the project manager, or the PMO leader, as PMI calls it in the new PMP exam. Okay, so there is a. Okay, so the PMO leader, as PMI calls them in the PMP exam. Okay, and also the project manager. So it's very important to understand that thin line and that kind of relationship, right? And there are different types of PMO. It's not just the supportive controlling directive, as I mentioned, but there are, the enterprise PMO, the agile PMO, the strategic PMO, product value PMO, different types of PMO. This is all what we wanted to share with 2015 exactly, Gaber.
Yeah.
Guys, governance as a chapter and agile as a chapter are the two key chapters in any PMP training with any trainer or any expert. We say expert, probably better than trainer. Okay, so pay attention to those chapters. Try to understand the full picture. Try to remember the full picture. I go back to these slides from the beginning. Try to really remember the full picture, the full project management cycle. This will help you better have the picture. What I tell my students, actually, Gaber, in my training, print this slide out, print it out and have it by your side all the time during the training. So whatever we're learning, for example, if we go to chapter 9, risk management, if you go to chapter 8, I think chapter 8 is about finance and procurement, chapter 7, schedule, chapter 6, scope, chapter 3, stakeholders, chapter 4, team and resources. Any other chapters, please go back always to this slide so you can understand where you are, and whatever we learn, whatever practice, tool, input, output technique, where does it fit here? Have this slide, this particular slide, print it out so you can follow with it through in your training, Gaber.
Yeah, I fully agree, because this is going to be a universal formula on the way that you can use it and you can relate to it at any given time, for the exam prep, and also even on real life, helping you to even identifying gaps, what is happening at the organization. So that's good. That's good. I agree.
So I think this would be it for today's session, Gabriel.
Yeah, I think again, thank you very much, Ahmed. I think you did a very good deep dive in this whole governance. I think it was very, very valuable. In the meanwhile, I was started to kind of answering some of the questions on the chat as well, which was also, let's say, buzzing with the people on live, where they also enjoy the explanation. And I think this is a great opportunity to people to better understand the new standards, the new best practice, regardless you're preparing for the PMP or not. This is something, as a project manager, you need to be part of that continuous learning path to moving forward.
Thank you so much. So I go back to the audience. Thank you so much, everyone. Really, I hope you enjoyed this and you benefited. Okay, so we look forward to helping everyone succeed in their project management journey, guys. It's not about succeeding in the PMP exam. No, that's short term. We think mid, long term. Succeeding in your project management journey. Remember, project management is a hobby, an art, a function, science, profession, and a job. Really. Breathe project management and you shall succeed. Because 1/3 of the world's economy is sitting on projects. Thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next Tuesday at the same time, Gaber.
Thank you all, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Gaber.